All right, guys. So the first topic we're covering today is sales strategy. The idea here is you want to reduce as much complexity in your sales strategy as possible to make it as easy as possible for reps to ramp up into the position. What I want to cover is your ICPs, which is your ideal client profiles, which is pretty much who you sell to, your offers, which is the offer that you sell to your ICPs, and then thinking about it and then also seeing if you can reduce complexity out of the closing side of your sales process, which will make sense here in a second. So sales strategy at a very high level when it comes to scaling up a commission-based sales team is you want it to be simplified, right? If I'm a new commission-based sales rep and I come on board and my job is to learn selling five things, five different ways to 10 different types of prospects, all of a sudden my job is 10 times harder than it needs to be. And that also kind of bleeds down to the leadership as well. So the harder it is to learn the job, the more the more training there is from your side when you onboard a sales rep, and also the more difficult it is for a rep to understand the sales job and execute and ultimately, make money doing it. So I'm going to go through some examples just to kind of paint a picture, and it'll be important for you to do this yourself as well. So ICP, ideal customer profile. So this is who we sell to. I'm going to give you a couple examples. But let's take, the business service company as an example, your ICP who you sell to, and it goes more in depth than this. But let's say that you have a business service that you offer, and you come into our recruiting service pipeline, and you want to recruit a commission-based sales team, and I get an understanding of, who you sell to, and we come to the conclusion that you sell to maybe 10 different industries, your B2B services, on top of maybe multiple different offers, like we'll talk about in the next topic. Well, all of a sudden I go, oh my gosh, there's a lot there. I immediately go, there may be too much complexity for a commission-based rep at least to learn the job quickly enough and ramp up into success. Now, let's say that we dive a little bit deeper and I go, okay, so you ultimately sell to primarily 10 industries. Let's break down the revenue per these industries so I can understand where the money's coming from. Let's say that we kind of broke it down. All 10, 8, 9, 10. And the conclusion was that in the first three industries, hypothetically, 80% of all the revenue was coming here. Okay. Meaning, hypothetically, if it was a business to business service company and they sold to 10 different industries, and three of those industries were ultimately bringing in, 80% of the revenue. And then, this industry was 5%, 4%, 3%, 6, 2, 1, 3, and that totaled 100% hypothetically. Well, immediately I'd go, hey, all the money is coming from these three industries. And what at least sticks out to me is that it might make sense, at least for the sake of your sanity and ramping up sales reps in the first 30 to 60, 90 days, to focus on them selling specifically to these industries. Clearly, the majority of the money is coming from these three industries. So although you can technically serve these other industries, it doesn't mean that that's the best strategy for a rep as they come on board. We're talking about sales strategy here, very high level today before we get into actual building out sales systems tomorrow. So who you sell to could be potentially too complex. And there may be too much learning curve for a rep as they come on board, meaning the sales conversations that they're having in the field or on the phones are much harder than they need to be. See, if you onboard me and I have to learn three industries versus 10 industries, well, that's much simpler for me to get through my learning curve versus selling to 10 potential industries. The lead generation process is simpler. The learning curve from a conversational perspective is simpler. My learning curve gets collapsed, which means I'm closer to making money in my commission-based sales opportunity. The idea here for sales strategy, this first topic today, is we want to reduce as much complexity out of the ICP, who you sell to, in your offers as possible, so that when you onboard reps, your leadership time investment goes down a lot, and also the job is much easier for a sales rep to learn. Now, ICP goes more in depth than just industries, and that's a B2B service example, but hopefully that kind of paints a picture. For B2B, it could be based on revenue. It could be, hey, small business, small to medium-sized business, enterprise business, right? So you can go a lot deeper with the ICP, but the more specific you are, the easier it is for the rep to ramp up into the position. If you have a salaried opportunity, which, if you're here, most likely you're looking to build a commission-based opportunity. If you have a salaried opportunity, you can get away with the rep having a more complex job to learn. The only issue is you're still delaying their path to success and revenue for the company because the job is harder. So even in a salary model, you still want to reduce complexity if you can to fast track the learning curve. Okay, let's use a construction example, um, and let's call it just roofing for you know illustration today. So let's say a roofing company comes to us and they sell residential and commercial. Okay. And they're onboarding reps, and this is ultimately a D2C model and a B2B model. And they're onboarding reps into two different areas within their company, selling residential roofing sales and commercial roofing sales. Well, all of a sudden, there's two different type of prospects that we're speaking to in the sales process. And I made the learning curve for the sales rep ramping up into their commission-based sales opportunity way harder than it needs to be. Okay. Or let's say that it was just residential roofing. Okay. Residential roofing. But, and it's just roofing, but maybe the company does three different types of roofing. Maybe they do restoration work. Maybe they do retail sales, which means the prospect needs to pay for the full roof. Maybe they do repair work as well. Okay. Well, in this example, that's cool that the company offers all these different services, but the problem is for the rep, all of a sudden they're learning to sell three different products and services, although it's technically roofing still, and they're talking to three different types of prospects. This company maybe is getting their roof paid for by the insurance company. This homeowner is paying for, roofs out of pocket, and this person is paying for, just repair roofs. Now, I know some of the examples that I'm going to use today are not going to be relevant to your actual industry and sales opportunity, but hopefully it kind of helps illustrate what I'm trying to communicate, which is this first topic in sales strategy, your ICP, your ideal client profile. The ideal is you kind of reduce as much complexity as possible and get very specific on who you're selling to. Okay. Maybe in this example, it's, hey, the majority of the money is coming from restoration work. So we're going to just at the beginning of onboarding a rep, take out retail and repair work. And this is going to help us get more focused in the recruiting, onboarding, and management process and make it simple for the rep to ramp up into the position. Also, maybe we come to the conclusion that, hey, 80% of the money that we're making in this hypothetical roofing business is with medium-sized homeowner clients, and all the home properties are in between 500K and 1 million, and that helps us understand who is the best person to target. Okay. So ICP is who we targeting for the sales process. The more specific it is, the easier it is going to be to teach reps in the onboarding process. Okay, so that's a little bit about ICP. If when I was using the 500K to 1 mil home value example, okay? Well, another bracket of prospects, and this is just a total hypothetical illustration, could be less than 500K homes, and the other one maybe is, 1 to 2 mil, okay? And let's say that this company looked at all their homeowners that they have as clients, and 80% of the revenue was coming from this middle bracket. Well, what I can do as a part of my sales strategy is I can get our sales team more focused. Let's assign territory where the homes are in this value, because clearly that's where the majority of the revenue is coming from, instead of getting them distracted here and here, which is only 20% of our revenue in this illustration. So how can we get more specific and simplify things in both who we sell to and what we're selling? To finish up on sales strategy, before we move on to the next topic, is there opportunities to reduce complexity in the closing side? Okay, and we see this in some sales models, so it's worth communicating. The B2B service example, let's say that they sold one thing. Okay, well, that's great because there's simplification there. But the problem is let's say that their pricing model was, hey, you can sell this thing from 20K to 40K. And the rep had the ability to sell it at whatever price that they wanted to within this price. And then below this, they had, 7 different, payment options here, and, 7 different pay in full options here, or something like that. Well, all of a sudden, what I've done in our sales strategy is I've provided not clear pricing to our sales reps. I provided all sorts of different payment options that they can sell through, and that adds a lot of nuance and complexity in the sales process, which is difficult for the rep as well as the person making the decision to move forward and buy whatever it is that you have. So the main point here is, in sales strategy today, the 3 points is simplify your ICP, simplify your offer, okay? Reduce as much complexity as possible. And what it looks like for a prospect to sign up with your services, whether it's a product, a service, both, whatever, how they buy is an important part of the strategy. Okay, the more pricing options that they have, the more that the rep has the ability to make changes in the end of the sales process, whether it's pricing or payment options related. That adds nuance of learning curve for the rep, and it adds sometimes complexity for the decision maker to move forward with your products and services. Another example would be the construction company. Okay, let's say that the construction company, we've filed it down, and we've come to the conclusion. In that example, it was just windows. Okay, they're selling windows to neighborhoods that have home properties of 500K to 1 mil or whatever. Okay, that's great, and that's specific for the sake of simplicity in the sales system, recruiting system, onboarding system, and management system. That's great. But one thing that's important for you guys to understand in sales strategy is that before we talk about sales systems, you want to think about, is there too much nuance in the way a company can sign up? Okay, so as an example, in a construction company, let's say that they sold windows at retail, or they sold retail windows, meaning that the homeowner's paying out of pocket for the windows and the installation and everything. Well, the homeowner's either going to pay cash or they're going to do financing. Okay. Most situations are not going to result into cash buys. Okay. And most in this example would be, financial products, meaning a homeowner says, yes, I want the windows, I want the project done, I'm going to qualify for financing to get everything installed. Well, complexity in the sales strategy as it relates to the closing process would be, maybe the company has, 4 different loan products that a rep can use in the sales process. And all of a sudden, the rep is trying to utilize 4 different loan products at the end of the sales process to get a deal done. And there's too much complexity there. I would do the same thing, and I'd say, hey, that's cool that you guys technically can use and sign up customers with 4 different loan products, and that's diverse. But let's see if there's opportunity for simplification here. I would do the same thing. Where's the majority of the revenue coming from? If in loan product 3, that's where 90% of our financing deals were made, then I'd say, okay, let's not even worry about these and only train reps on executing this one that's bringing in 90% of the financing for the company.